Okay, I think we're active now.
So it says recording.
It says stop recording.
Okay. So welcome back into this. Unfortunately, we are going to finish the rest of the episode recording. We're having
If I want to point,
Technical difficulties. That's what we call
I
it.
mean, I have a new router down here and everything.
it's difficult because if I want to point at you, I actually have to point away from you.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So
Here's this guy.
luckily, we really didn't get into our intro like that. The filming just because we're
MP.
yeah. So we were going to start off. Not going to be and this also prompted about where's the line between horror, fantasy, dark. Do you want to start about bandying about those first, or do you want to start off with the review?
I'll start my review.
Okay, the Green Knight, but you said Briar.
So,
I'm gonna eat a hamburger.
The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
The Dark Knight. Evil never sleeps. No, Green Knight. I loved it. But I think it's a movie you want to go in with the right mindset. My parents actually went with me. Bought my ticket as well. Treat me to it because they know I like dark fantasy. So I got to see it for free.
Did they buy you your snacks too?
Some of them, not all of them. I got free popcorn.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So no, we saw Green Knight, and I did give my parents a heads up that it was more of an artsy film. I mean, it's A24. I've seen a lot of their other stuff now, Head of Hereditary and stuff like that. So I knew what to expect from them. Also based on some reviews and stuff, I knew it was going to be more of an artistic film.
Right.
My parents were not expecting that, and that's not usually their cup of tea. So afterwards, my mother said, "Oh, thanks for letting me know." It made the experience better for her knowing that it was going to be more of an artistic film. So just be aware of that fact. The trailers, I know they made it look more like an action adventure film. Um, that's advertising, but think of it more like an A24 film. It really is. Lots of long, drawn out shots, lots of empty space, lots of quiet. It's contemplative is the best way to describe it. How was it in terms of bringing the story of the Green Knight to life? Cinematography wise, beautiful. Not beautiful in a traditional sense. A lot of it is just kind of dark and it's got that November vibe where things are just kind of shutting down for winter and stuff like that. So a lot of it was not gorgeous in terms of like spring colors or summer foliage. It was just gorgeous in terms of the actual camera work. But it is a character study more than anything. It's about him discovering his his adulthood, pretty much. It's him discovering what it means to be both an adult and also a knight and somebody who has responsibility and taking acceptance for his life. There were some changes at the end. The original poem was actually pretty heavy as well, but this one just kind of goes heavier in the direction of a character wrestling with death and what it means to have that kind of heavy weight on your shoulders. But it is a good story if you go in with the right mindset. That's how I'll describe it.
So this kicked off a conversation between Tom and I before we started. Is I mentioned that as an fantasy. So the question is then we already had a kind of discussion. This, I guess where is the line drawn in is it horror?
Sure. Now I'm thinking about it. I kind of think horror can be a type of genre that can be added on to another genre. Because I just realized you have things like sci-fi horror, thriller horror, and now in this case, fantasy horror.
Mhm.
So essentially, you're actually going with the first genre.
Horror is a horror.
Yeah, but when you go to the first genre, then you add on. So like, to me, if it's horror, anyone can die. It's very bleak, and for fantasy, I mean, yes, you can think of say Lord of the Rings is definitely fantasy, but they had a few minor horror elements. That's definitely not fantasy horror. So in that case, maybe the Green Knight. And I saw bits and pieces of the original with Sean Connery. That was definitely more fantasy than anything else. So I think the concept is you can have fantasy horror, or you just separate the two.
Yeah.
So in the case of the Green Knight, what did you say? Would you say it's
Yeah, and I
fantasy
would
horror
say
or just fantasy?
there was fantasy elements, but I think that the accurate term is dark fantasy, and that's how it's been described. What I would say is, unlike a lot of films, the dark aspects don't come from the fantasy. It comes from the character's life and their responsibility. The fantasy is just more reality. I mean, it is a version of England where there are fantastical elements. There are giants. There is magic. There could be someone who's using magic. But it brings out the darkness that's more internal in that film. In which case, I actually think it gets into more of a almost like a something wicked this way comes. And I bring that up as a bit of a segue because I think that that's a different side of dark fantasy that doesn't always get mentioned. I think a lot of people they bring up dark fantasy, they think of it's let's say like Game of Thrones, like it's going to be a fantasy story, but it's going to be that extra dark, extra haunting. It's going to be basically Lord of the Rings if Lord of the Rings was focused on like the Shelob battle against the giant spider. That is an aspect of dark fantasy, and I say that as someone who, by the way, I wrote Whispers from the Depths, a dark fantasy novel. So no, it's buy it now. It's that is the side of it, but I think it gets into that merging point of the fantastical in general terms, not fantasy, but fantastical. I'm explaining it myself. And horror.
It tastes delicious.
I do. I taste like cinnamon apple.
And corgi.
And corgi.
How do you know?
There's that one night.
Okay, moving on.
They shed everywhere. If you live with corgis, you taste their hair at some point. No, there's going to be the fantastical element that has to be there in dark fantasy. But it's not a positive view on things. A lot of times the magic is more to be distrusted than anything else. In fantasy, with an adventure, yeah, maybe the Dark Lord has magic, but our heroes also have magic, and it's going to save the day. You get into science fantasy with like, Return of the Jedi or something like that. And you've got Star Wars. The magic of the Jedi is also part of how you win the day. Dark fantasy has a pessimistic view on it. Of what can it's that same question in horror. What can go wrong? And so with dark fantasy, the question is with this magic, what can go wrong? But I think the other side again, I said, no, come back to something with Wicked This Way Comes. It can also just be a pessimistic view of life to an extent, an honest view of life where things happen to be fantastical. And I think that's more the camp of something Wicked with This Way Comes, in which, yes, there's real magic. That is a fantastical part of life, but it's terrifying, not only because they have the magic and utilize it, but just the characters coming to face some of the heavier questions of life.
I would disagree only slightly with the word but that doesn't exist. So first of all, the irony about the term dark fantasy. You're correct. People today think of dark knee-jerk reaction, grim dark, Games of Thrones. But the term was actually not coined by the term was coined by Charles L. Grant, who wrote when he asked what is best described what he wrote was dark fantasy. And the reason why the fantastical elements, supernatural, the eeriness. So in that case, it's a much more flexible term. Fantasy is a loaded term today, and I'm not going to say I blame, but because the Lord of the Rings, and to a lesser extent, Aragon, but also Harry Potter, that when people hear the word fantasy, the automatic knee-jerk is wizards, dragons, pseudo medieval trappings, what have you. Or at the very least, contemporary like Harry Dresden, things of that nature.
Or urban fantasy with guys showing off their ab muscles on the cover. Like, please stop, get out, go back to urban fantasy. That's what I want to think.
But the irony about the history of the genre is horror, which started out as a subgenre of fantasy, works were considered fantastical in nature. Whether it was a gothic romance about a castle, or The Monk by Matthew Lewis about basically the devil masquerading as a female who was masquerading as a monk and sex. You know,
That book is like over 200 years old, by the way.
yeah, that was like actually the people that actually credited that would be the first for its time. The Monk was actually credited as being the first over the top like splatter novel.
Spoiler alert for a book that is older than your great great grandparents.
Yeah. So all of that was fantastical. So that's why horror was under that genre. And obviously it's just great that you mentioned something like this. The original murder and that's I mean, what fantasy elements are really in that novel? It's a suburban town in Illinois, which is Greentown, Illinois, which is a stand-in for Bradbury's hometown of Waukegan. And a carnival shows up that is looking to suck away everyone's soul. So that was the fantasy element. So when Charles Grant, who wrote his quiet horror and wrote Oxford Station Stories, his use of dark fantasy meant dark, atmospheric, brooding, emotional, and the fantasy was just fantastic. Whereas like today, the dark fantasy is like, oh,
yeah,
and that's all that is that's how terms change.
Yeah, and
it's neither right nor wrong.
Now, Tom, you mentioned this was a conversation before I arrived. You were comparing it to thriller. I actually have some thoughts on that, but what are your opinions on that with comparing dark fantasy with thriller?
You know, we're opposed to that. Anyways, well, as I said, like, there's actually one of our shows that I'm going to cover that was definitely thriller, but a good smattering of horror in it too. So again, I think horror can be added on. Horror can stand on its own, or it can be added on to something else. Kind of like, I hate to say it, romantic comedy.
Yep.
Huh?
Yeah. Warm Bodies. There you go.
Oh yeah,
You can add horror to pretty much everything. No, I actually think, Kevin, I we'll get your feedback on this one because you were disagreeing with Tom, but and I wasn't there for the original conversation, but I do think the comparison with thriller is an apt one, in which if you take horror as kind of like the general term, is either like the broad term or like the keystone term of things that are scary, things that bother you, get under your skin. There are some films and books that are straight up horror, and that's really where we place them. But there is overlap, and in marketing terms, sometimes people in marketing will use the term thriller instead of horror, because certain audience members will be like, I don't really like horror, but I do like thrillers because I like the suspense aspect. And there's a huge overlap of horror and thriller. They might say something like, "Oh, I don't like, I just think of like Freddy Krueger and horror. I don't like that." Oh, but this book is about a murderer who goes around killing people in their sleep in a tiny little neighborhood. They still reading a story about a murderer. It's the same thing, but they don't like that little magical element. It bothers them for some reason. I find that interesting. But there's some people who hook onto to thrillers, but will avoid horror, and they can be quite similar. But it gets into more of a traditional, I don't know, traditional, more of a real world killer. Even if that killer is somewhat supernatural, it's more of a real world killer. It's more of your serial killer type thing. In that regard, I do think dark fantasy is a lot like thriller, in which it's a neighboring term. There's a huge overlap. You can sometimes call a book dark fantasy and horror, but there has to be a fantasy aspect. So as a thriller, I would say it's going to be more of your serial killer film, story. It's going to have or other kind of thrilling aspect of it. It's going to be more real world, and it may be horror. Dark fantasy, it's going to be fantastical. It's going to be fantasy first and foremost. But when you turn up that dial to an 11 on the horror aspects and you make it scary, then it also becomes horror as well. And just like in marketing with thriller, some people will use the term dark fantasy. At certain conventions I go to, depending on who's across the table, just to stereotype a little bit, if it's like some grandmother looking to shop for her, 17-year-old grandson who likes to read, there's a good chance I'm going to use the term dark fantasy versus horror, whereas Scares That Cares, I'll use the term horror more freely because there are horror readers.
Right.
Whispers from the Depths, which is dark fantasy, I would say first and foremost because it's very Tolkien-esque in terms of being another world with fantasy elements, but it's written as a claustrophobic suspense story with horror, and it's more, the monster killing characters one by one. It has horror tropes.
Right.
So yes, it's like Thriller, but it has to go into the supernatural side, whereas Thriller avoids the supernatural side, and that's the dividing line. If you go, they're all horror, they're in the horror circle. If you branch off away from the supernatural, you're steering towards Thriller. If you're branching into the supernatural, it's probably sci-fi or fantasy.
Going to disagree with you again.
Go ahead.
Doug Wright, he's a biographer. I always like to start with the horror unit. And you're talking purely marketing terms. So
Yeah.
Now I'm going to talk philosophically.
Yep.
The best quote I ever heard was
Mm-hmm.
so when you take that concept right there, then it doesn't matter if there's supernatural or not supernatural, whether there's wizards or swords. If the emotion of horror is not present, the emotion of horror is a core factor of the story.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is the marketing. And my perfect example of this,
What?
did you guys watch 8mm with Nick Cage?
No.
I almost feel like that should be the movie we watch next next month. 8mm, I think I brought this up already before. 8mm with Nick Cage is possibly his. Although I've got something funny to say about Nick Cage. But
we all have funny things to say about Nick Cage.
He plays a private investigator who gets hired by the in her vault finds a whole bunch of porn. And that doesn't really bother her. What bothers her is the snuff porn she finds. And then the realization that my husband not only got his rocks off, but he got his rocks off
Murder.
People die. And she hires so he is descending into the underbelly of. And I'll tell you one thing: if there's any allure to porn, this movie really undercuts that because Nick Cage descends into the underbelly of LA porn. He's actually able to identify the girl and the mom and kind of classic story. Mom, well, yes, she ran away to LA to become a star and things like that. And it's actually a brilliant performance by Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix working, very young Joaquin Phoenix working at an adult bookstore. And he gives an excellent portrayal of, okay, you would think that maybe the person works in an adult bookstore. Hands with a job bad 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and somehow he's still here. Why? He just is. You know what I mean? So he's going to become part of the culture. And it is such a harrowing movie. And there's no supernatural element there. It's probably marketed as a thriller. But there is a point in the movie where he. Actually, I don't know if I'll tell you this, guys. We're going to think of watching.
We'll watch it, yeah.
I won't. But at the end of the movie, man, he is a hollowed out shell of a human being because of what he's encountered. In that case, I don't care what the marketing is. That's a freaking horror film.
Yep.
But that's all semantic. Maybe a little semantic. I think it was even Brian Keane, maybe 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, recommended that all young horror writers start passing this stuff. Because that's what was in your heart. You can tell yourself this is more what Paxton because that's what's going to.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, and this we're bouncing back to obviously marketing aspects, and those really are marketing terms. Genres are an invention, and the boundaries are fluid for the most part, but they do kind of center us. And so yeah, I went through conversations actually with my publisher about Whispers from the Depths, and it was pretty clear early on that this is going to be marketed as dark fantasy. Um, but it's a I still get comments from people that are like that. It made them very uncomfortable, especially fantasy readers. But what's interesting is that because it's considered dark fantasy, some people are willing to give it a try. I've said before there are plenty of horror movies that people watch and don't even realize it is horror.
Yeah, exactly.
Kaiju horror. They think of Godzilla as just these cute movies, and grandparents show it to their kids. Um, that was originally a horror film. It's lost its scares, but it is a horror movie. Jurassic Park is a horror movie. That's one of the films that really got me into the horror genre. But it's also sci-fi, and there's some lighter moments in it. So people who don't normally like horror and kind of cross their fingers at horror are willing to go for that ride and watch that because there's some other elements that get them into the genre or get them into watching the film. Um, a lot of those same viewers, when you say the term horror, they instantly think of like Friday the 13th, and they're not interested in that.
Right, yeah.
But they will watch Jurassic Park, even though they both fall under the horror umbrella,
Yeah.
and they both involve a lot of murder. I think one tends to be a little bit more positive in terms of the ending, but there's still a lot of the same elements. They're borrowing from the same notes. The pacing and the style of Jurassic Park is a horror film. And that came in with Whispers from the Depths as well. There are horror elements in it. It's not a feel good book, and a lot of fantasy fans have said it may be uncomfortable, but I really enjoyed where it went. And again, I'm not to pat myself on the book, but just to say that's a prime example. Yeah, pat myself on the back of the book.
What happens when you step between two authors? When
Yeah.
you start talking about this, they go.
Yeah.
All right,
But yeah, I would say yeah. It's with genre, it doesn't have to be one, and that's not always accurate. But depending on who's buying, some people tend to buy under one name versus the other. But a book can be completely both, and I think yeah.
One of the best things I ever heard about was Norman Partridge.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Your desk try to sell it.
And Dark Harvest, I would classify as also dark fantasy.
Yeah.
Yep.
What I was also though, I would also call it dark fantasy.
Mhm.
It's got that noir ability, that noir,
Yep.
things like that.
Yep.
All right, so that's it. Dark fantasy horror. Where's the line?
We love you.
Nobody.
Stoker Awards, Bram Stoker Awards, they award it to horror and dark fantasy. So you're welcome here.
So
I think we need to take a break.
all right, so
My head's falling off.
we're gonna take a break.
We're
We'll come back.
boring Tom.
You ear rape me, the both of you.
We're going to come back and talk about
We can do that.
all right. So those of you that stay with us, all right, watch for this whole thing. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Fast forward to the next 5 minutes.
We have to stop
I'll keep you
recording.
entertained.
Oh,
No, stop recording.
no, let it go.
You want to let it go?
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to default to over the next little part. This is really,
Yeah.
This is still going to be easier to edit because it will just be a matter of cutting. There's not all this. Before I was
Later you get segments.
before I was putting this here. Now that I figured out how to use the software thing, tomorrow I have a gigantic file. I will upload that to you. Then over the next couple of weeks, it'll be really
Editing.
easy to edit segments and parcel that out to people. So if there are people who want to watch the whole show, there are people who only want to watch segments. I'm afraid of the line. I don't know why.
I think yeah, Kevin, I've been telling you the same thing for a while.
You know what?
I've been telling you the same thing for a while. I have to look this way
Uh,
because you're on that side of the screen. No, I think that's the way to go. Is just record it live and then parse out segments.
When you start talking, my God.
So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the camera and bring it out to the bathroom break. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and gentle beings. How are you? There we go. We'll give you some entertainment. We have our lovely inkiness corgi designs. Do, 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 do.
Before he started seeing
Hi.
traction in his channel.
Hello.
10 freaking
Hi.
10 years.
How are you? Hello.
So this is the benefit of watching the whole show, folks.
This is my friend, Rogaine. Your skeleton is nodding. Ah, your skeleton fell. Alright. Yeah, I don't think I've ever in my life, even when I could eat unlimited burgers, thought I want to eat a whole bunch of burgers. Must be Bill Murray from Nice.
No, I got that at Lowe's, actually.
Lowe's.
Lowe's has some good stuff.
It's got a little it says trap of something. Oh, trap or treat. And it's a little like little bear trap that glows. I'll give you play by play. What else can we find that's interesting here? I'm sorry I have to be your entertainment while I go in the bathroom. That's just the curse of me not having a 40-plus-year-old bladder. Children, don't get old. What do we have here? Let's see. We'll find some entertainment for you. That is slick, but it's also surprisingly sticky. So we've got it ain't going anywhere. Kevin has a sticky bat there. This is pretty sweet. Lego minifigure.
Was Tom back yet?
Nope, he's still at this point. He's probably dropping deuce outside. He's been out there a while.
Showing off my
He's
my
probably
Lego horror collection.
yeah. He's probably smoking. True story. When the Lego movie came out and they had the little astronaut character, I think it was like the blue helmet or whatever, I freaked out. Yeah, spaceship. I had that character. I had that exact Lego figure, and the little broken strap on the helmet or the bottom part of the helmet. Mine also broke the bottom part of its helmet. So when I saw that figure, it was a blast in the past. It brought back my childhood, like out of the blue. I couldn't believe that they nailed that. This is still recording. I am still splashing
Yes,
myself.
Chuck is going to be the benefit of watching the whole stream at once.
Is that you watch me pouring alcohol on my body. Sorry.
That's a completely different vibe right there.
Dirty Dancing.
A slight music change, and that if you're like, and you gotta be like looking at your
Something out of the 70s.
I just came up with another series I watched, Kingdom.
Kingdom.
So I'm gonna actually step on yours, Kevin. You used to step on ours and step on yours.
What?
I'm gonna add on the head in Kingdom.
Wait, Tom, you need to listen to us talk about Dark Fantasy for another 15 minutes.
You really want me to push in the face? Oh my god, I'm gonna go ahead and go serious. Did you guys see when I was doing this?
Yeah.
Say check your phone. That's how I know you were entertained.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back from our break.
Hello.
It's burger time.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about some of the horror series that we've been watching. Some of them are series that are new, been out there for a while. For me, there's one series that I rewatched.
How about no? I got burger in my mouth.
You know what? You complain about us talking over you.
No, you go first.
And now you're like, burger in my mouth.
No, you go first.
Tom, we're gonna watch pieces of bread flying out of your mouth.
Hit the camera from here.
All right. So, I'll hold off on the series I thought that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know. I guess this is also another topic of discussion before the show started. Lately, I've struggled a little bit with my movie watching because I really have preferred the longer arc of the series for some reason. I don't know why that is. I just really prefer to watch horror series where the characters' arcs are developed over the course of 7 episodes. So I don't know why that is. That's just we were talking about that before we started. The one series that I discovered that's been out for a while on Netflix. It wasn't originally on Netflix, but brought over to Netflix. Was Slasher season 1, season 2. Now I really ended up liking all of the. I think I like season 1 and season 2 best. Season 1 is, and there are also when you think about it, they also are certain subgenres, of the slasher story. Season 1 is a small town horror about a slasher killer who goes on a bender based on the basically on the seven deadly sins. Killing people who have got secrets.
I should make a movie with that idea.
I know.
We call it Seven.
Yeah.
Star Brad Pitt or
and a box.
Kevin Spacey.
And a box.
Anyway, so yeah, and the idea is that every single person that was getting killed has some secret that was at Harvard that was also tied into a larger secret. That one, it was really good. Really, really good. See the killer coming. Season 2 was okay.
Yeah, just the victims.
Season 2 was okay. Season 2 was your trapped in the wilderness, like picking off where kids, work at a summer camp. So there's also there, and something terrible happened there where one of their fellow camp counselors ended up dead by their hands, and they buried her out there. And now they're going back to. They heard the land has been sold, and they're worried that she was going to find the body. Go back in the winter. Like that's not really talking like Adirondack.
Kevin, we got 3.5 feet of snow, so yes.
Yeah, but we don't get that like every day. That's not like our life, We don't like this is like the type of place where
in a world where Texas exists and life shuts down with 2 inches of snow,
exactly.
we are the severe case.
So they go there and find out the body's gone, and they get marooned and actually they get marooned at the old campground, which has now been turned into yoga.
Also, Ithaca.
Retreat. And then somebody starts picking people off one. Now,
Still Ithaca.
This one was that?
Still Ithaca.
Yeah, this one. This one is was a little bit less engrossing. What this one though of the twist at the end was far more. Season 3 takes to an urban setting in an apartment building where there's a brutal and then a year
Good concept.
Was that it was a really excellent installment because again we got to know and a lot like American Horror Story, the character, the actors came back, they had recurring actors that played wildly different. That's what made it intriguing. Was that like American Horror Story? Maybe this guy was a racist small town cop in the first season, but in this season, this, you know. That was really cool. That was really, really good. And again, I the sort of kind of little vouch the culprit was. There is a season 4, but it's on Shutter, and they described it as a bunch of wealthy people on a getaway island who are now being picked up. For some reason, the description did not ring my bell. Yeah, I'll still probably watch it. Tom, you and I saw Fear Street. Why don't you launch into Fear Street?
I saw episode.
Absolutely. Now, to give you some background to it, it's actually based on the Younger Person books by R.L.
Younger
Stine.
person,
Now,
small people, the school for people who don't read good.
and do other
The
things
elderly
good.
challenged.
No, well, some of you may know R.L. Stine did Goosebumps. Now, it's like
Yeah.
for elementary, but I guess the Fear Street books were for
Mhm.
junior high and up.
Yep.
Now, it's a 3-part series, 1994, 1978, and 1666. And it's dealing with a supposed witch's curse on this town called Shadyside. And when you're watching it, you get the idea that the town of Shadyside is always, I mean, it's cursed by constant serial killers, economic depression, and crime, while its neighbor Sunnyvale is like the exact opposite. Now, one thing I'm going to look at, and maybe we should do it bit by bit, Kevin. Like,
Sure.
a lot of people weren't too fond with the first one when it first came out. I do think it was they were trying to do a little Stranger Things there. Like they crammed 690 songs within 10 minutes
Yeah.
walking into the school. Now this, I mean, let's be honest, Stranger Things was appealing towards all ages of all groups. And this one is like, oh yeah, you remember that song? You remember that song? You remember these clothes? And I was watching. Now it did get much better, especially as the story was progressing. Uh, I didn't like the main character Dina right away because it just seemed like she was willing to get her friends and brother killed for her ex-girlfriend. But then it expanded with the 1978.
Well, I'm going to interrupt.
Yes.
Just
Oh,
because
you want to jump in?
this is
You
all I
have
have to
seen the
say.
first
I
one.
have seen the
Yes,
first one, so
yes.
at this point, that's all I have to say. I didn't love the characters. I adore Stranger Things, and I did. You mentioned the music. I was watching like, dang, we actually did have some pretty good songs in the '90s.
Well, yeah, but like one after the other
Right
within
actually,
10
but
minutes.
but I agree. I didn't love it, and I kind of chalked up to being I'm less a fan of the slasher horror genre than some other ones. And technically, this is also supernatural, but it's basically a slasher style one. Yeah. Now, I will say, slashers, the ones you mentioned, sound more interesting. When you kind of go to that extra level where you've got some depth of the characters, that's what felt like I was missing in Fear Street. Not that I expected depth. But that's kind of what I'm drawn to is some deeper characters in those scenarios. Fear Street, it's I didn't expect depth, and that's not what Fear Street is.
Right.
I hadn't read the books, but I was familiar with the books. It was fun. It was all right. It wasn't my favorite type of horror.
Right.
And the characters stuff like that. I can't put a thumb on what I didn't like about it. It was just it was all right.
Well, actually, because I was saying, like the first episode, people were put off. I mean, it was essentially put in the same vein as Scream, though,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of interesting.
Some people loved the first one, and some people adored it.
And it was interesting because, spoiler alert, by the way, the first person killed was Mia Hawke from Stranger Things. It was very much like Drew Barrymore's character.
Mm-hmm.
And but I do give props out to Leah Janiak, the director, because as it went on, they were able to add in the necessary layers. Uh, the second one, 1978, definitely an homage to Friday the 13th.
Oh, absolutely.
And the third one would be anything dealing with the Salem witch trials. I'm sure they're playing movies about that. It definitely got better as it went on, giving a little bit more to the story. I really did enjoy that. Well, I mean, first of all, the serial killers of Shadyside were just normal people before they got cursed. but I really liked them because they were. I mean, they could be very scary too, especially
Oh,
near the end when you had one with a couple with masks,
The
one with
villains
a
were
firm
great.
face.
The
Yeah,
villains were great.
it is worth a watch. You just have to remember once that first one gets over, that it does get better. As I said, it was kind of they killed off the two characters I actually liked, and oh, my friends are dead, but I'm with you again. That's all that matters. And it's kind of funny. I like the little brother because I did actually identify strongly with him.
Mhm.
I guess his rap name is Little Peanut, by the way. My wife was dying at that one, but I said I identify with him because he was kind of like the more nerdy. I enjoy reading serial killer books. I guess I didn't tell you guys that. Sorry. This is about when I was
That's no surprise.
Yeah. So Kevin, your thoughts on Fear Street?
So I think Fear Street was again another one of those series where I enjoyed the series more for its plot and twist, the way the plot developed over the course of the series. Like after a while, like I still think that was oh, I didn't put that down for upcoming horror season. Stranger Things season
Oh,
4.
it's coming, but they haven't. I don't think they've revealed the date yet.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I still think the development character evolution.
I think I'll kind of stare for this one.
I don't know. Over
No,
the
that's
course
just
of
right.
three seasons. So I would agree that Fear Street I didn't watch at all for the characters necessarily, although the kid was kind of cute. I like him. He was pretty cool.
Little Peanut Man, you're awesome.
It was really the development of the plot, and again, this is another one when the ultimate reveal is made. I I should have expected it because they were very clearly playing on avoid spoilers here. They were very clearly playing the certain tropes, and I should have expected
Yeah.
it. And I will say this: I was surprised at the amount of gore that was involved.
Yeah.
Like that one kill with a grenade.
The bread slicer.
Yeah, I was not expecting.
And it was so funny. They were so proud of it. See, we took a watermelon out back to the parking lot. We tried it, and it works. Like, oh, okay. So you guys were seeing that
But
it
you
worked.
know, and there are some people who were initially upset about that because of the fact that technically Goosebumps is young adult fiction, not young adult.
Fear
fiction.
Street never was.
Yeah. But a lot of the grown-up Goosebumps fans are like, "Are you kidding? This was made for all the Goosebumps adults."
That's why they crammed 690 songs in the first 10 minutes. It's
Don't
not.
get me wrong, the soundtrack was great. Love the
Yeah.
90s, love the 70s soundtrack. And then one of the 1600s.
But those songs are there because the audience is now in their 30s and
Here's
plus.
my only quibble, and I imagine it's because there were a lot of monsters that we never got about that we just got we only got little would have been more about them.
Yeah, those would be like little small or like an anthology on Netflix about here's what happened.
Why don't you go
well, actually, I was gonna say, you kind of you tap put your finger on the pulse of it. It was the characters that didn't connect with me, and it's because I was watching like they don't care that people are dying, and that's kind of what struck with me early on.
Yes, thank you.
And so I will say I'm glad I'm going to finish the series. I'm glad you mentioned that the third one you like the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, it gets better, and it's finally they wrap it up, okay, so they can connect the first to that.
That one looks more interesting for me, and I'm a bit of a history buff, so that one looks kind of cool. The problem is, and this is not a spoiler alert because this is pretty much the focus of the first 20 minutes of the first movie. People die, and they're kind of just worn out by it. I don't know. Maybe this is something that's going to get covered later. Maybe there's a reason for it. They hinted at there's a reason that people are kind of like, yeah, people die, whatever. But when the characters approach death as in whatever, that's part of what turned me off with it. Is they're also therefore like someone died.
Yeah, there's some social commentary. Oh, another school shooting.
Yep. Yeah, there is social commentary there.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yep. It's interesting. It is a conversation point, but for me personally, it doesn't make an engaging film.
Okay. Now, Scream, should we talk about?
Why don't you go on with Vital and the
And Kingdom. I think I'm going to
And
do them all.
Kingdom, you do them all because
I'll-
it's time for Chuck and I to go now.
Oh, no, because I actually engage. All right, now, actually, the
Tell
ones...
us a story, Papa Tom.
There we go. And the ones I actually have I think are mostly in the foreign market. The first is Batal. Now they're all series, by the way. They're all series, Netflix mostly, I think. Batal is actually an Indian horror movie, and it deals with the Boz Squad, which is like this paramilitary police unit, who was tasked with clearing out this village of these farmers because they're going to build a highway through there. And there's a lot of actually some good side dramas too. That the leader of the squad or like commanding officer is in cahoots with the highway builder. And what had happened was they were going to open up this tunnel that the villagers are ready to shoot to keep it from happening. Well, they're able to open up anyways, and unfortunately, they released the ghosts of these British soldiers who died during the Sepoy Rebellion, Sepoy Rebellion in 1857. And now, good cinematography, some pretty good scares. If I had two issues with it, too much exposition dumping at certain points, and second, and it might be just that there are some things in Indian culture or modern day Indian society I'm not aware of that they were bringing in there like I should be aware of. I think it was pretty good. It had a good story. Just the commanding officer of the British was trying to gain. He wanted to be the absolute emperor of British India, and now the remaining survivors are holed up in their old barracks, and it's got some good stuff to it. Second is actually Kingdom. Kingdom is on Netflix, and it's a South Korean horror. And some of you already know, is he doing another South Korean? Well, yeah, they've been doing a lot of good ones lately.
That one looks interesting. I'm curious.
It is. I mean, it's funny. I think with Batal, I think the Indian horror market will open up, and they'll definitely get their groove. In this one, I almost thought it was like a super prequel to Train to Busan in terms of the fast-running spastic zombies. No, but there's so much going on. Drama, intrigue. It's the Chosen Dynasty. The Emperor, the Emperor actually got infected. And they actually give a background to why they turned into zombies. Some good scientific background. The Crown Prince, who's actually a bastard child, so he's dealing with a stepmother who claims to be pregnant and, who's going to take over. And this is a time where they kill you and your family. The Crown Prince has a good character arc of, going from, this privileged upbringing where you could eat whenever you want to and people are starving the streets, to truly caring about the people and trying to stop this terrible invasion of zombies as they move further and further south. Are you getting ready?
Yeah.
Well, the last one I'm going to talk about is actually...
Was it good?
It was good. Kingdom is worthwhile. It had a third one about more like another prequel of the whole start to it, which I wasn't too much of a fan. It just showed a person's need for revenge so much that she'll destroy the world for it.
Okay.
I mean, there could be a third one sequel, but we'll see. Now, my last series was actually called The Head, and I just saw that, and that's falling into the thriller or horror. Guess what? It can be both.
It can be both. We had a conversation about this.
Yes, and
Several of them at this point.
yeah, but I'm actually quick about it then. Yeah. Anywho,
What are you saying?
you're not quick. You're slow and methodical. Aha. So, anyways,
Tom, you just have premature evaluation.
Oh. On that one. Yeah, cheers to Chuck on that one. Cheers. Our last one is called The Head. Now, it is, most critics aptly said it's like a combination of And Then There Were None and Then the Thing. There are no actual monsters in it. It's an Antarctic research base. The scientists have discovered an enzyme to destroy CO2. So, yeah, they actually threw climate change in there. But what happened was the summer crew went home and the skeleton winter crew stayed on. They're going to be in a winter for several months without light. And when the summer crew came back, they found a whole bunch of dead bodies. A couple survivors, trying to get the background of what had happened, because obviously everyone was murdered. And so you got to rely on these narrators. And there's one trope most people don't know of: the unreliable narrator.
Oh yeah, everyone knows that. But yeah.
Yeah, and so it actually had a good back story. That there was a base before that burned down and someone died. Is this revenge come from beyond the grave? I will say we'll say third to last episode, I kind of knew what was going on. Second to last episode, I knew what was going on. But it's not like one of those, oh, this is easy, or one of those, hey, you didn't give me any clues. But they had some pretty scary moments too, because just the Antarctic barren wasteland and the cold and the darkness and how it can really close in on you. I think it did a pretty good job. I think that's thriller horror.
Mhm.
And that's it. See, guys, very boom, bam, do you wear, ma'am.
All right, now we're some more verbal diarrhea.
Ah,
So Tom and I watched both of them. So we'll kind of ping pong this back together.
wait, wrong
Hang
one.
on. I'll get my shot glass. You guys go ahead.
All right. So I had seen this. There's Bud again.
Yeah.
Tom and I had seen this bouncing around Netflix for a while, so I decided to give Scream, originally aired on MTV, a chance. I watched seasons 1 and 2. I did not watch season 3 because they decided to change it. I really enjoyed Scream seasons 1 and 2, with the exception of
The additional ending episode,
the
Halloween episode.
Yeah, the Halloween episode at the end of season
It had nothing to
2.
do with the story. Oh, they a little.
It seems very much tacked on. I would have loved to have seen. I didn't watch season 3. Maybe I should force myself to watch. But what I really liked about Scream, now first of all, the culprit in the Scream series is not wearing the ghost.
It wears a different
It wears a different face, but what I love.
Brandon James mask. That's
Right,
what they call it.
it was a different type of mask. What I loved is they still use the ghost face. And what I really liked about
Which means the same guy.
What's that?
The same guy.
Well, what it does is it elevates ghost when you really think about it. And that was actually a little side note. I'm going to do a little detour on the horror cave about my book. But I really got into horror models. Things like that. I got a
Don't touch my toy.
Don't touch the toy.
Many hours.
Abby, Kevin won't play.
Hours working
He won't
on that.
share.
But I also recently this summer I did the Invisible Man.
Where is it?
The Invisible Man. Here we are, folks. It's how many drinks we are in. And I was a little disappointed that there are models for Freddy, there are models for Jason. There's no models for Ghostface. I was really, really kind of bummed by that because I think Ghostface ushered in all the Scream movies. I actually adore every single Scream.
It's a great design.
I feel like the whole series managed to reinvent itself every movie. And I was super pumped for Scream 5, which is gonna bring back Sid.
Oh, they gotta kill Dewey. Dewey's gotta die.
Eventually, at some point. But I think Ghostface has become iconic, and I think the voice, that voice, what you watching? I'll play a game. That has really become just as in my mind. That voice has become just as iconic as Mask and Mike Myers' Mask. So I thought it was great that Scream chose to use the same voice modulator, but it wasn't in Woodsboro. It was completely different. And I really loved it. At times it gets a little teen bopper.
Yes.
At times it is primarily their teen characters. I will say this. Was it okay? Was his name Nolan? Was Nolan the horror geek?
Not Nolan. I know who you're talking about. Noah. It's Noah.
So Jamie Kennedy's horror geek in Scream is really just borderline annoying. Noah may have been my favorite character. So
He
Noah
was.
in season 1 and season 2 is the resident horror geek in all these shows. He is basically the counterpart of Jamie Kennedy.
Like with Fear Street.
What was that?
Like Fear Street.
But he's even more so
Yeah.
leaning into that where he's literally giving us about how horror movies are supposed to be. And Noah does the same thing.
Yep.
But he's so much more of a likable character. Like I dug him. I really thought he was my favorite character.
There were moments during the Scream, like seriously, like, okay, this guy's a jerk, he's gonna die. She's a jerk, she's gonna die. And they're like, oh my god, yeah, that girl did nothing. And then it was pretty harsh. Here's the thing about the Scream series. At least for the first one, I kind of think they borrowed the ending from another of the earlier Scream movies.
Sure.
And the second one, like, I honestly think they could have gone with something else. I mean, there was an opportunity there to go with, say, Brandon James' brother instead of who they went with.
Yes.
And of course, I understand because you said someone was teeny bopper, like, oh, I can't tell anyone, or else, I can't tell anyone. It's all a secret. I gotta lie to everyone. It's like, tell the cops. Then, of course, you deal with the cops. They're dumber than hell.
I will say this. I was not. So I'm typically I'm not. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with gore. Gore and splatterpunk is an essential part of the horror genre. When I was writing book reviews, if I got a splatterpunk novel, as it was well written, it got a great review from me, regardless of it being my. When I say I'm not a fan of splatterpunk and gore, I just mean that I believe it's a total valid expression of horror. It's just if I walk into Barnes Noble, that's not what I'm gonna buy.
Yep.
That having been said, I was surprised how gruesome some of the kills
The
were.
trencher kill.
Well, yeah, we don't want to give any spoilers. There were two.
If you haven't seen it by now, come on. Seriously, people.
You
What?
know
What?
Why are you picking on me?
Why are you ruining this for everyone?
This is just like the meme you shared. What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. So there are two kills in this series that are among the most gruesome kills. What made them work, what made them both work, a sense of emotional loss. You know what I'm talking about.
I know at least one I'm thinking of.
I'm thinking of the one involving the barn and the one involving the tree.
Yes.
And as that scene was happening,
I was thinking water and coffin.
that was bad too.
That wasn't gory, though.
But the thing with that one, but the one with the barn and the one with the duct tape, my head is like, no, don't do that. And then it happens, and like I said, and I know for many people, I'm a milk toast when it comes to gore, so I know.
Guys, I'm not looking off the screen. I'm looking at him. That's what.
Yeah, that's how it. So, I know that. So I guess.
Continue, Kevin.
So I guess maybe what I
Go
need
ahead,
to do
Kevin.
is rearrange this for our next show. But I know that my gore level is probably significantly lower than other viewers. But what got me for that was not the gore, but the emotional, like I felt that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I felt that.
Reach out. I can pet him.
It really worked for me. Any comments?
Oh, yes, it did, Kevin. It really worked for you.
I am gonna have to rethink.
No, as I said, I mean, I didn't see the third one, and it's a shame because they really should continue, but maybe, again, not do a throwaway and actually have a killer that makes more sense to the third one.
Yeah,
especially with the adults who technically that was us growing up at that age range, and they're all doing the same thing. We're trying to protect you, so we lied like crazy. I like to see some of them get their comeuppance, and I also like to see a killer who makes sense. Okay, I'm sorry, second one, the killer, no.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The second one was really.
He knows if he disagrees with me, I'm just gonna jump down his throat.
It was kind of the second one, the killer was kind of.
Yes, thank you. They copped out on
So
that.
I have a couple of additional theories to talk about that slot perfectly in that category of horror, thriller. I basically wrapped up with my wife because my wife and I have our shows. Right?
Our stories.
Yeah, Our Stories. She watched the first one to watch my show. We recently finished The Sinner, season 3 of The Sinner with Bill Pullman. And it's a really nothing supernatural about it all, but it's a really neat. So Harry Ambrose is a detective in Dorchester, New York, played by Bill Pullman. And Bill Pullman just plays masterfully. Harry Ambrose starts off as a pretty unlikable character. He's emotionally withdrawn. He married, but he has intentions for dominatrixes to abuse him.
As you would.
He's very just a distant type of person, and that is all the side stuff. What his involvement in season 1, Jessica Biel is the main character. And Jessica Biel is like just freaking out on the beach and like murdering the person, stabbing him like 8 times. But from the very beginning, Rose is like by something, and he starts digging into her background and finding out at some point she's been abducted, abused, whatever. And it really was a really, really excellent example of like unpacking this convoluted mystery at the very end. It all makes sense, and it was also very tragic at the very end. Season 2, he is called into a case.
That was filmed in our backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Season 2 was
Filmed in a week. It was like 5 minutes from me.
season 2 was him. Kid who was part of like the people thought were it turns out they were not. They were kind of trying to run away. And again, and this was where we really started to learn more about Harry Ambrose, start understanding why he is the way he is. And by season 3, now season 3 wasn't strong because season 1 and season 2, Harry Ambrose was working for people, trying to figure out what happened to be able to turn around. Trying to understand how this altered program this little. Season 3, what he's really trying to do is now trying to catch his foot, and that guy's not in the back at all. He's moving crazy in that respect. Um, but Bill Pullman does just a marvelous job at portraying this broken man who knows not a shadow, desperately does not want to be, doesn't know how to. But he's also by season 3. Now, from what I understand, season 4 is supposed to focus solidly on Harry Ambrose, which I'm really, really. The other one was no surprise to you guys. I'm sure you guys will have seen it. I rewatched True Detective season 1 with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. It is perfection. It is the perfect blend of the noir cop story, nice dad, Thomas Ligotti nihilism thrown in with some cosmic horror and the Yellow King and Carcosa, and we're never really sure if something moderately supernatural happens at the very end or not. But just so good. Some wonderfully nuanced performances by both Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out True Detective, I don't know what's happening.
Would you like a burger?
I do have one series, unfortunately, I DNF, which among us book reviewers, you know what that means. That means did not finish. I tried very hard with American Horror Stories, the anthology series where instead of the same story out of a whole season, it was going to be one-offs. First 2 episodes were interesting. It took place back in Murder House. Couldn't get through episode 3.
Okay.
Any other series you want to talk about?
No, John?
No, actually, I've been catching up on the Disney Plus shows that my wife and I fell behind. So we're behind on horror. I'm behind on horror. Yeah, we're doing the whole Marvel stuff.
This is quarantine catch up now. other shows. I mean, it's not all horror about us, okay? But there are other shows we have that
Yeah.
we're trying to catch up on.
Just like
WandaVision's great.
just like we're not pretty
Yeah. WandaVision was good.
I'm a pretty piece of meat.
All right, we will take another break, and then we'll come back in a little bit. Stick around for the whole show, then watch.
Oh Lord, I always think I'm doing anything terrible. I never noticed that. Did you have surgery on your leg?
Yeah. Right here.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's quite.
So
I
yeah.
don't think
So.
I've ever seen that.
Oh, I've never seen him in shorts before.
So when I was seven, I fell off the monkey bars at my house, and the cap had come off the screw, and the screw went into my knee and went up to my thigh.
Oh my God.
And when I looked down at my thigh, I thought I saw bone because it was very white, but it was just like the muscle and the fatty tissue of my leg that had been opened.
Bars are trying to kill us, aren't
And I got railroad staples in my cut, and I have no idea how many dozens of internal stitches. Yes.
they? Oh my God.
So yes, the monkey bars opened my thigh up from like the knee to the hip. Just
A new.
I've been X-rayed.
The monkey bars.
The monkey bar. I've been X-rayed like 24 times from different injuries. I've got a Tim Allen sized medical record.
Well, we were actually talking about it. If I could put the Dr. C about we can actually.
Mm-hmm.
2 years. 2 freaking years.
Yeah, I had the movie. I think it was it Volcano or something Peak or whatever. Dante's Peak. That's what it was. Dante's Peak came out. So in high school, I injured my leg. I went out exploring the creek with my cousin during a snow day on Valentine's Day. Tripped over a barbed wire, sliced, and then I landed on the rocks. And it hurt. I landed right on the rocks around my kneecap. So yeah. So I went into the house, my grandparents' house, which was nearby, and sat there complaining about how much it hurt. And then after watching some TV, I looked down and realized both layers of sweatpants were torn open. And when I pulled my sweatpants, I realized I could see all like the tendons and stuff on my knee because I hit a rock. Yeah. Then I got stitches. I went to Dante's Peak, and I mentioned that because I started to get blood collecting in my leg, which had a brace on it. So I passed out at the end of Dante's Peak and hit a wall, and they called an ambulance. So yeah. Yep. I'm also part of the reason that lawn darts are illegal. Because I took one to the head as a kid. Mm-hmm. Our books have the same color scheme. I have seen good reviews, yeah. Oh, we can blur it. We can talk about what we're working on.
No. I mean.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
No. I think people got caught onto the fact that you basically authors just do it just to do it. Point. Figure out how to point. There we go. This is things backwards. It's making it difficult. So yeah, if I want to point to my book, I need to point. Why is this so difficult? It's not the drinking. Camera angle. There we go. Mm-hmm. which is an exciting town. You love your Susquehanna.
It was fun. Well, here's a great meme.
Tell Tommy she has to shake it more than twice. So point to that bottle that's over here. So we've got, let's see here. Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's one of my favorites. If I point to Creature from the Black Lagoon, it looks like I'm pointing at my book.
That's one of my holy. That's one of my white whale models. Let's see. Let's look right now just for the heck of it. What?
Yeah, my mom gives me a hard time like, why do you like horror? And doesn't realize the fact that when I was a kid, I watched Creature of the Black Lagoon. I don't know, like 4 or 5 times. I don't know. I loved it.
I want the hammer to fall.
It was always the Black Lagoon.
Yep.
I remember when they put it on TV and everyone
Uh-huh.
Oh, I remember that was 3D.
So yeah, another injury story. You know how? Do you remember lawn darts and how they became
How
illegal?
unsafe those were?
Yeah. You know how they became illegal because they hit a bunch of kids?
You were one of those kids.
Yes.
Where?
Right to the head.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I took one to the head.
Oh. Didn't hear that, kids.
Wait, this is like Mr.
They're
Rogers'
recording,
neighborhood.
they're recording, so that's it.
We are recording.
Yes,
Lawn dart
back in the day,
right
we
here.
had toys on top of the head.
Right
Let
to
me guess,
right to the
you
skull.
just took it out, you threw it up in the air.
No. I was at a family reunion. Somebody yelled candy. I went running through a lawn dart game, and I took one to the head.
Yeah, they had a lot of toys that were dangerous.
So we were talking about this. So the monogram. You guys probably don't know this. Anyone out there, Monogram is the Monogram features Black Lagoon.
Lagoon, not lagoon.
Goes,
Not the
Lagoon.
beans.
The bean monster.
The Monogram.
It makes bubbles in the Black Lagoon.
The Black Lagoon goes for $50 on eBay.
Nice.
The one that I want, official, Moibus features in Black Lagoon. Currently, it's
Why don't you get a model of the creature
I don't get the scar on there or not.
Creature of the Black Lagoon from
No, I'm too white down there.
Yeah,
the scar right
there. So yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get that. But the thing is, the weird thing is,
Show some leg.
You don't know.
Hello.
Here's another one. Here's another creature of Black Lagoon. But you never know when things are going to show up. Like that Mike Myers model originally passed.
So
and then one day, someone was selling it on eBay for
So all these jobs you've been getting, we know the money's going. All right.
toys. All right, so we are going to move
I need
on.
some sun down here.
Guess what?
I'm trying to move this
I can't
car.
imagine you tanning. That's just
You
weird.
gotta put that.
Oh no, I can really well.
Oh my god, it's pretty bright.
Flag for like
Yeah.
either pornographic content or causing bright flash.
Looks like an old man's ass.
Tom, you are up with McDonough's Hammer of Truth.
All right, yes,
time.
I'm Tom McDonough, and this is McDonough's Hammer of Truth. And this hammer falls on a recent movie that's out in theaters and on HBO Max, and that's going to be Malignant. Now, spoilers ahead, by the way. I'm not going to give away everything, but some of the things I'm going to bring up are definitely kind of giving you the idea of what's going to happen. It is directed by James Wan, and of course that's. What the hell are you doing?
He's actually hammered.
Oh, but don't hurt him. We'll have to use that. I don't want to get sued for it. All right, yes, James Wan directs this, and of course that kind of gives people a lot of hope for the future. And then to start off with, it starts with actually starts in 1993 through VHS tapes, and
93, 94 has become kind of like the core horror
Oh, yeah.
years of 90s horror,
Well,
retro horror.
my junior year in high school.
when you think about it, in the 80s, the horror was all in the 50s. So now,
That's great. My hammer
It's his
truth.
hammer time.
Mine.
It's his hammer time.
All right, no, you guys don't jump into this. You can jump into it later. Tell you what, at the end of this, you guys can bring it up. Okay, now as I was saying, what the so he's jumping in on it already. I thought we were not going to talk about that night at Scares That Carriage Truck.
we have lost control.
Oh my God. All right, now, anyways, it starts off with these doctors trying to control some patient who can eat electricity and is killing people. Then it goes to the modern day.
You lost me at
Yeah, the movie lost me at that too. It centers around a woman named Maddie who is pregnant. And unfortunately, she's married to a douchebag husband who beats her. And that night, this creature murders him and attacks her. She loses the baby. And the whole thing is she's been having these visions of murder, specifically the doctors who were involved in some surgery back in the first opening. And as it goes on, of course, the police are involved because she has all this information. And first thing is, suspicion falls on her too. And how would I say this? Because I actually looked at Good Bad Flicks, and he did a review on this one. He said the same thing I immediately thought. This was kind of a rip off of Basket Case. All right, and it wasn't that Maddie was helping something out, but it was weird because he meant Good Bad Flicks mentioned how the movie can tell if it was being serious or not being a parody, but giving a lot of homage to other horror movies. Like he even had a police station massacre, which was Maniac Cop 2, and several other horror movies as well. And the to be honest, I'm going right out. This is a 2. Okay, this is a 2 out of 5. And I know that's probably actually the smallest I've ever gotten with a review. Now, of course, some people may like it. In fact, critics said, "Look, you're either going to love it or just complain of how plain it is."
Mm.
And my wife and I were watching it on HBO Max. She mentioned that yes, immediately the soundtrack was terrible. I mean, it did sound like 80s synth music. Maybe that's what James Wan was trying to go for. And it was going off in different directions. And near the end, we're like, "I'm not your sister, but you're my sister." I'm like, oh my God, it's just getting so bad that they're throwing in. Now, I mean, first of all, to get anyone ever got a 0 on Hammer of Truth, it means I stopped watching it. A 1 is a bad one that they tried at. 2, there are some moments that were interesting, but in the end, I mean, if someone said, would you watch again? The answer is no. No, I did not like this movie. It didn't really do it for me. I don't want to take away from James Wan or anyone else. I just think they didn't know what direction the movie was supposed to be going in.
I mean, I will say I've heard a couple people say the exact same thing. They didn't know where the movie wanted to go.
To be fair, though, I don't think I would.
Yep.
I mean, it's on HBO Max. You have HBO Max. You got some time to kill, but again, he was taking a lot of ideas, and not to mention when you first saw the creature, it was also more like a slasher too, because the creature had what would look like some human characteristics. I mean, I can give it all away right now if you guys want me to. Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert! Go watch Malignant.
Oh, nice. No,
it's
it's Maddie was in that hospital, and the patient that we're talking about, Gabriel, was her parasitic twin. And the doctors, they called it malignant because they called it a cancer because technically a parasitic twin is a tumor. And they tried to cut him off. I mean, they cut a lot of it off and then crammed the rest of it back in her head. Sorry, guys. And unfortunately, when her husband beat her, like threw her head against a wall, that woke Gabriel up. And he would take over her body. And I hate to say it, everyone's like, oh, it was so scary because it came out of the back of her head and twisting her around. So, the movements look very weird. I'm like, that's Harry Potter. That's the first Harry Potter. The monster's in the back of your head. And there's one thing I thought was a great idea. They mentioned the Seattle Underground because they actually built the city of Seattle on top of the old city of Seattle, and they had like some pretty cool shots of old carriages and stuff. And think that would be a great place for an actual horror movie, but just about that.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, I mean, after a while, I kind of figured out what was going on. I'm thinking, yeah, this is terrible. I didn't like it.
It kind of makes me want to reread The Dark Half by Stephen King. I didn't get into that.
Nope.
So The Dark Half by Stephen King.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, we start off with yes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they mentioned that.
When the main character is like 13, 14 years
Wait, Kevin's on this side.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to see it.
Yeah.
When the main character terrible migraine.
It's not a tumor.
Find like eyeballs working and like fingernails and things like that, so that the other twin was absorbed. He also grows up to be a writer. And also the book was about how Stephen King's pen name Richard Dawkins. But the character used other right he used the pen name to write all these like sleazy pulp novels that get famous.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually like with
Chuck Tingle.
Yeah. Like with Stephen King, somebody ruined it. He had a photo shoot where he really has a for his pseudonym. And in typical Stephen King fashion,
it was a Chuck Tingle.
You started to say Chuck Tingle.
Yeah, so I did. Typical Stephen King fashion, because the character funeral was actually a twin. Psychically manifests and then starts hunting the author and tormenting her. Now I think I really have to go.
Yeah, they mentioned the whole absorption in utero thing, but they never even talked about the whole. It had this way of manipulating something to do with electricity. They didn't even touch upon that one.
That seems like kind of a big thing to ignore.
The absorbing man from Incredible Hulk.
So,
Nick Nolte.
yeah, if you were thinking about Malignant, I'm going out there and say, not unless you are really bored, you want to throw
Treat it
something
like a
on
cancer.
there. Nice way of putting it. So that is McDonough's Hammer of Truth. No.
Let's just give it a minute, and I can find a way to cut it later.
Who do you guys think you are jumping in on my segment?
You have a nice laugh.
Do I come over and piss on your briar patch?
Okay, so now we're gonna do classic. Who wants to do the intro first? Chuck wants to do the intro.
Okay.
Because you had
spoiler alerts are done, so you can come back now. All right. Welcome. We are talking about classics, things that are old, like these two guys. And me. All right. So, classics. Want me to start? All right. So my oldest is 14, so we've been watching, step by step some of the classic horror movies. I'm kind of ramping it up into tougher and tougher territory. We're kind of aiming for like The Ring. That might be our next watch.
Classic?
Well, I mean, at this point, it's like 20 years old, so Samara's great.
15, 20 years, okay.
Black hair. But no, we watched, and by we I mean my son and my wife watched The Sixth Sense with him, and the fact that my wife actually watched it is significant. I'll come back for the other reason, but for the first reason is because she doesn't like horror. She doesn't usually watch horror, so she actually sat and watched it with us. It did creep out my son, but not to the point where he was like hiding behind the couch. Which is the other point about my wife watching it. it doesn't hold up in terms of scares. If you're familiar with it, the scares are kind of spent in the first watch. I will say. I remember it being terrifying, but it was also more formative at that point. Horror is interesting in that certain movies that are very similar, some will terrify you at a certain age, especially your teenage years, when you're getting used to horror, or if you're like early to the horror game, maybe even like late single digits. It tends to peter out after that. That was the case for this one. It didn't hold a lot of scares. That's not a critique for it. It's just commentary of someone who's now seen a lot of horror movies since then and is writing horror at this point. It's not super scary, but it is a good movie. It is an excellent movie, and it's comfortable enough that I was able to actually watch it with people who don't typically watch horror, or just getting into horror, which is probably why it made a bajillion dollars when it first came out, because it's not too severe.
Like people who say, I don't like horror, but I really like.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I loved it. It was a great experience. It was fun to come back to the movie after a I don't know, probably 20 plus year gap. I haven't watched it since the 90s. I don't think. It did hold up really well. Carrot. Yeah, that was a 90s movie. I think that was. I'm gonna guess 97 plus or minus 1 year.
That could be right. I mean, everything held up except Bruce Willis's hairline, but he just
Yeah.
got better looking. He just
No.
got better looking.
But Bruce Willis and the characters are all great. I actually have less critiques of the film than I used to. I felt like they kind of cheated early on with the big reveal. Spoiler alert, he's dead. Oh, 99, so a little closer. I remember seeing it in the theater. So I do think on watching it now after it's been out for a while, I do think they did a decent job of hiding the reveal. I still think they cheated a little bit, narratively speaking, with kind of hiding the big reveal. But it is really well done, and the main three characters, the mother, the son, and Bruce Willis, the Holy Trinity. uh, the no, they did an excellent job with the film. If you haven't checked out Sixth Sense in a while, go back and watch it. It deserves a classic
It's
status.
supposed to be M. Night Shyamalan's the guy who likes to give the Indian burn because every movie ends with a twist.
Yep. And had I think at that point he was usually credited with making three good movies. I actually thought his fourth movie, I can't remember the name of it, like tells you no, not The Happening. That was a little bit later. No, the one with the woods where everyone was kind of out in the colony, the village.
The Village.
That was okay. I think that got a little. People were a little too critical of it, but I think the first four M Night Shyamalan films are pretty decent. Science was very good. I enjoyed Science was number 2. I enjoyed Science. A lot of people liked number 3, which was Indestructible. What was that one?
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable, yes. Unbreakable. I actually liked Village a little bit more. But I didn't. I thought Unbreakable was pretty good. But no, Signs holds up. I mean, for like a classic '90s movies, I think it deserves a place to be held in high regard and to be remembered as one of the highlights of the '90s.
Is almost like the very young.
Crazy. Gary Busey, so good. Oh,
Born Gary Busey.
I really can't remember the name of the crazy people.
Yes, I know, and I'm trying to think of it. I'm dying.
I can't remember the
Let him talk. I'll find it.
I can't remember the oldest sister's name. Elderly, it's a great. I mean, like it's one of those stories where it's about a werewolf, and the only mystery is who is the werewolf, and then when you find out who the werewolf is. Now the only mystery is how they survive. But
Everett McGill, I knew him.
Okay, Everett McGill. So, but it has that. A lot of 80s horror, especially 80s horror based on TV novels, has that turn to it. Okay, yes, we know that more than likely two main characters. So, it's an enjoyable film. The next one I have,
I will say before you get to the next one, Silver Bullet was actually I found scary, especially for a werewolf movie because sometimes you enjoy the story but not the scares.
Right.
Silver Bullet was scary.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Who else plays the sheriff?
Terry Quinn. Terry Quinn.
Terry Quinn. Yes.
You're way better remembering actor names than
I
I am.
was flipping through. So.
So the second one I have starring Linda Hamilton and
Tom will find it.
Yeah. I mean,
I have to change Siri's name to Tom. Hey Tom, who starred in Children of the Corn?
Well, I guess waiting on me for that.
You're slow, Tom. What do I have to update your software, Tom?
Oh my God, give me a breather, will you?
Is he the guy from Wings?
No, it's not the guy from Wings. I think it might be Peter Horton. Hold on.
Yeah, it's Peter Horton. Peter Horton. Peter Horton.
Yes, I didn't have to look it up. It's Peter Horton.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
I gotta say that I like Children of the Corn movie much better than the short story. The short story, both the husband and wife are thoroughly unlikable. They're at each other's throats. By the end of the story, they're not very nice.
Yay.
They end up,
okay.
Yeah, they end up dead. Whereas in again, I think Children of the Corn is a great example that where we have a sneaky suspicion that probably both of our two protagonists will make it. But it's a good story, and I also like you can see even early on Stephen King grappling with Stephen King's an interesting author and that he was raised a fairly strict Methodist, never been able to get that bedrock morality. Yet at the same time, he really grapples with radicalism and fanatical
Outlander.
Yeah, fanatical religious beliefs, and you can really see. Honestly, if you read that movie for its subtext, where Peter Horton's character is in the church and he's berating the kids about, what kind of God would do this. You can definitely guess what kind of he's. Now I'm going to add one.
You can have one of my grapes if you want.
I'm good.
All right.
I'm going to add one, as you know I do. The other classic that I watched recently was
Ooh.
Again, another one of those ones where I did like the novella. Sometimes they come back, but I really enjoyed the movie much better. Again, you kind of, there's some more libations there.
Some vanilla and Dr. Pepper.
Again, when sometimes come back, you get the idea that maybe our main character is going to survive, but it has that heartfelt, you really enjoy it. And the last one I have is Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. What really kills me about Dark Knight of the Scarecrow is there's not a whole lot of gore in it, very little at all, but it is truly a wonderfully atmospheric film that is pretty much an annual Halloween release. And I'm going to turn over to Tom. He's got one last classic for us.
Well, actually, too, since you're going to do that, I'm going to do that. And actually, the good thing is they're actually well connected. Now, our first one is actually Night of the Creeps.
It's a lot of items.
Yes, he does. And of course, he's pointing right in front of them just so everyone can see it, too. Night of the Creeps, 1986. That was. Now, I would have to say, a lot of horror movies, the 80s, some were scary, some were not really. You just enjoyed watching them, but you weren't too scared. And I think Night of the Creeps is one of those. And what I enjoyed about that was zombies, alien space slugs, and of course Tom Atkins. And it'll get to him soon. Kevin will post the picture I took of Tom
We
Atkins
should have
right now.
we should have
We'll
had
give
a
you a few
counter.
seconds to enjoy this picture.
We should have had a counter right here that counts up every time he mentions Tom Atkins. Like,
No, it's actually, it comes off as almost like a noir show, but it starts off in the 50s actually, then moves to the 80s. It's on a college campus. Some guys are pledging a frat run by a guy named who calls himself the Bradster, so you know it's 80s. And unfortunately, when they're told to steal a cadaver from the school's med lab. It turns out it was this 50s guys who got infected by these alien slugs. So now the slugs are infecting everybody. And of course, it gives the great tagline of "Good news is your dates are here. Bad news is they're dead." It's an enjoyable movie. Fear itself, I mean, in terms of scares, I wasn't scared, but maybe I was just getting. Well, it was 1986. I was like 9, so maybe I was already jaded by that time. Now the funny thing is I know. But Night of the Comets, Night of the Creeps, excuse me.
Night of the Comets is a good one too.
Well, yeah, true. It's got the guy from Star Trek Voyager in it. But actually, at least in the next one, because Night of the Creeps was directed by Fred Decker, who directs the next one, and this is just pure nostalgia. Monster Squad.
You're like a human IMDb.
Well, it is. I remember
weird things. The funny thing is the students at school are shocked.
What? That we like each other?
No, they're shocked. That too. They're shocked. Mr. I'm like, are you kidding? Walking horror.
I remember weird things. I mean, I would do great at bar trivia, I think.
Yeah.
No, when I brought up how it was weird, because in one of the scenes where this kid's being chased by slugs in a bathroom, some graffiti on there was "Go Monster Squad." I mean, basically, it was Fred Decker saying, "I want to do this movie." Now, that was the movie that you, like, when you're at a young age as a kid, you're always trying to rent. You're asking your parents to rent it because it was awesome. It was basically Goonies for classic horror monsters. You just had Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon, Wolfman, the Mummy, all showing up to find this amulet that would just tip the balance of good and evil to evil. And the only ones going to stop them are the spunky kids and their super awesome treehouse. And I actually,
wish I had a super awesome treehouse.
Of course, nowadays we're like, we'll fall out.
Build one for
We better reinforce that with like some rebar and some concrete.
That's true.
We'll do that right now. Now, it was actually a good story, and there were some scares, especially at a younger age. There were some scares. Kind of felt bad for Horace, aka Fat Kid, in it. There's one that I identify with Horace and his jams. Wearing jams.
Oh God, I remember jams.
And the funny thing is, when you're watching again, you're thinking, "Oh wow, the main kid, the leader, is kind of really a jerk who has no problem putting his friends in danger. Like, we gotta look into this. The cops can't help us." The funny thing also is you had people actually dying there. Monsters actually killed some people. But I thought it's one of those interesting nostalgia movies to watch again. And you have all the classic monsters in there. I mean, honestly, God, I think that's one you and Aggie and the whole kids can watch.
Yep.
Because, I mean, there are a few moments. And one thing I found out was very adult, too. Remember Scary German Guy? Scary German Guy was this scary German guy. Everyone thought he was some weird guy. Turns out he was fine. They found Van Helsing's diary, and later on the kids got him to translate it. And, you know, the kids are leaving, they're like, "You seem to know a lot about monsters." Huh? Boys Life?
Boys Life.
Scary German Guy.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, anyways, they said, "Wow, you know a lot about monsters." He goes, "Yeah, I think I do." And he closed the door, his sleeve pulled back, and it showed the number tattoos from the Holocaust camp. So there's a little adult thing in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If you have young kids, you want to introduce them to horror, it's easy. That's the way to go. Well, I don't know if you should introduce them, but it was good. I enjoyed it.
All right. So those are our classics. We're going to take a brief break before we launch into kind of the end of our show.
Sweet. Are you crushing my head? I'm trying to.
I'm seeing in front of you.
Smack.
I have the high ground, Anakin.
I have the high ground, Anakin.
So my son is on a Star
You show me Ewoks yet?
They're watching that movie. I can't get over.
I mean, Ewok story.
That is got.
Well, you have the lava grand.
Like you, I want to try to jump over you.
I have the lava ground.
Right. Could they have found a better? Here's my issue with the whole prequel trilogy.
You have one issue with the prequel trilogy?
No, this is one of the big.
There's me in the
Welcome,
first place.
welcome, Star Wars nerds.
Especially when they were pooping on Rian Johnson, The Last Jedi. They're like, "Oh, you're demystifying the Jedi." I'm like, George Lucas already did that. The entire Jedi Order were idiots. All through the first prequel series. They totally ignored the evil right in front of their head. And Darth Vader, the most feared evil in the galaxy, is just a freaking horny teenager that complains through the entire
Yes.
3 movies.
You're not
Like
respecting me.
my favorite meme is this sums up all the prequels where Obi-Wan's telling him, calm down.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm still torn whether or not it was horrible casting and Hayden Christensen
I gotta find
terrible
out.
actor, or did they do this on purpose? Was demystify Vader? He's not really this. He's just a prepubescent, mommy issue, horny teenager.
Spaceballs made it very clear. We're all gonna meet in the prequel, Star Wars, The Search for More Money.
Yep.
Spaceballs.
So there was actually a Star Wars game. There was a Star Wars game called Knights of the Old Republic, which goes back into the old history of Star Wars. Really, really well done, highly regarded. And they have the concept of the Gray Jedi. They're not the Light Jedi. They're not not the Dark Side.
Old as shit.
And
Basically what Luke is in The Last Jedi.
and I thought that the final 3 movies were going for that, but they steered into safe territory and avoided it. I wish they hadn't. But if they had actually steered into the whole concept of the Grey Jedi of realizing you kind of have to have a pragmatic view of it all, it would have been a much better series.
Here's my problem with the 3.
You do.
Burgers. If you're
Poor burger.
if you were to consider the 3 movies on their own merits, they're pretty good movies, but they fail as a trilogy. And it's like, okay, why couldn't Disney have found someone like Kevin Feige to oversee these Star Wars movies?
Well, they just needed to oversee it in general. I actually don't think the people that had. I don't think Rian Johnson was the wrong pick. I just think that they needed to oversee and plan it.
So here's the problem. Here's J.J. Abrams. I'm gonna make us all excited about Star Wars again. Rian Johnson's like, that's great. I'm gonna do my own thing. And the third movie is like J.J. Abrams going, fuck, Rian, now I gotta fix what you just did.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was no cohesive
Yep.
arc through all 3 movies.
Exactly.
And honestly, I'm gonna offer a controversial opinion.
Controversial opinion. I'll give you the. I'll clue you in what he says. Go ahead.
Think
Palpatine coming back was good.
it's also canon.
It is canon,
Except that there's no groundwork laid.
but there's no groundwork. That's valid.
Mandalorian did it.
If they were to bring Palpatine back, they should have hinted it in the first 2.
Because they didn't have a plan. They didn't pre-plan.
And then Palpatine coming back was, by the way, there's a message from Palpatine in the opening scroll. I'm like, I mean, it would have worked because it's canon. The Dark Horse Comics, Dark Empire, had already advanced the idea that Palpatine had used a series of clones to transfer his body in because the dark side energies were burning out the clones.
You mean not playing things like having suddenly a knife that when you hold it up, it gives you the shape of what it was.
Like, all of that was canon, but we need that stuff laid from the groundwork laid for that. And, he was like, let's bring Palpatine back and just randomly say it on the scroll.
Yep.
Like, I was thinking more like, I'll go pee in a minute.
Kevin's not peeing right now. We got him with Star Wars.
I'm on a roll, sorry. When, Emo Vader.
Oh, the grandkid.
Emo Vader. Adam Driver.
Yes.
Why am I blanking on
Adam Driver.
who he played? Ben Solo.
Darth.
Here we go. Well, this one, yeah.
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren.
When Kylo Ren is walking into the dark side planet, and you see the cloning tanks with bodies of Snoke, and you hear Vader, and you hear Emperor Palpatine speaking in first Vader's voice, then Snoke's voice. I was conflicted, whereas like part of me is like, this would be great. This is great. He was pulling the strings all along. And part of me is like, it's not great because nobody set this up.
Exactly.
It would have been great.
Exactly.
And the worst part was that was such a visually stunning scene. All of that was visually stunning, but they just pulled it out of their ass. They didn't set it up at all.
So you're welcome, Star Wars fans. We got you a little excited right there.
The Mandalorian, awesome
Mandalorian
series.
is great.
They did touch on that.
Yes, Mandalorian, you're good. You're good.
I mean, those are man tears I had at the end. Yeah, if you didn't cry at the end of Mandalorian, shame on you.
Shame on me.
You didn't cry?
I didn't cry, but I did enjoy it. I felt emotions.
Oh, it was awesome when they remember how they open up every show with the whistling woo 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 woo.
Yep.
And they ended it because they turned it into a horn section.
Yep.
And that was just perfect.
I mean, Mandalorian is one of the few shows we've actually gotten my family to sit together and actually like, hey, it's Friday night, we have to watch Mandalorian.
I have to watch Baby Yoda. We started out calling him Baby Yoda. I'm calling him Baby Yoda.
It's still Baby Yoda. Grogu, you're still Baby Yoda.
Only problem is, of course, you put Michael Biehn in it, he dies. We're talking about the Mandalorian and its awesomeness.
Actually, I need to watch the cartoon series. I've seen episodes of the various cartoon series from Star Wars, but the fact that they connect all the canon and fill it out.
Are you watching Disney too? The Ewok TV movies.
Oh, Ewoks. So I actually made a
Battle
joke.
for Endor.
I actually made a joke about the Ewok movies on Facebook once, and lo and behold, somebody I didn't know actually liked the post I made making a joke about the old Ewok movies. I looked up who it was. It was the actor who played the kid, the teenage boy from the Ewok movies.
Wait, he liked that you were making
He actually reacted to my Ewok post.
Well, it's funny because I watched those when they came out on TV back in the 80s.
I saw them on. We had satellite.
And of course, as a young kid, oh, cool Ewoks.
Yep.
You realize the second movie had Wilford Brimley as the hero.
Hit me with some of that bedroom there.
Wilford Brimley and Ewoks.
I know you're just like hoping.
Yeah.
You know what burns more than this lightsaber? Diabetes.
Diabetes.
Several hundred.
The real dark side of the Force.
Several hundred credits to his name. That's what that poor man's going to get remembered for. He's looking
up something.
Actually, Kevin, I should ask you that. At the end of The Mandalorian, did you cry or you get a little misty-eyed?
Honestly.
You're going to say no. Good. All right, I'm the only woman on Into the Abyss.
There's only one reason why I didn't.
Well, you kind of knew in the end it was going to be successful. The goodbye was terrible.
Like, someone's already spoiled.
When he took his helmet off.
With a screenshot of Luke Skywalker.
Oh, that. Talking about Grogu and Mando saying goodbye.
I don't give a crap.
You suck. You're terrible.
I was never a baby Yoda. What I'm really looking forward to though is that was great.
Oh my god, I'm blanking on her name.
What's her name? Yeah, she was in Daredevil. In all of them, actually, all of the Marvel series.
Rose. Damn it.
Google, help us now.
Absolutely.
On the pocket.
Yeah, well, I'm almost done.
a long day. I'm tired.
Shit. Hold on. And of course, you can't pronounce any names.
I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, I had a post liked by the kid who acted, or no, a guy who acted in the Ewok movies.
Yeah, we're talking about the Ewok movies from the 80s, the made-for-TV ones.
There was two of them, weren't there?
Two of them, yeah. I watched
Yeah,
them so many times.
the first one,
So that
and
was
yeah, it was a
Donald
teenage
for-
boy. He was a real
Donald-
jerk,
Donald
too.
for Endor.
That was the second one with Wilbur Brimley. Rosario Dawson.
Yes. Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano was awesome.
Yep.
And have you so have you ever watched Clone Wars, Chuck?
I've seen episodes, but I
I think
haven't
safe to
watched
say
it all
I
through.
definitely am crushing on Rosario Dawson.
I've seen
She's
a lot.
awesome.
I've seen a lot of Clone Wars again because my son watches them, but he never watches any order. So one of these days, I'm just going to have to just buckle down and watch the Clone Wars.
Yep.
But I think it's crazy how the Clone Wars
Oh my
is
god.
actually way better than the prequel.
I totally forgot that was a Burger King and not McDonald's in Front Street. That's why the burgers are
That's
bigger.
actually okay though, because I prefer Burger King. That's what
I had
I
8
prefer
burgers tonight.
Tom,
And I can go for another one right now.
Tom, that's great.
I mean, I already had a floor burger.
I mean,
Hey, if you like
all shame deserved on you, but that's great.
if you like
I think I would like the filter version better. Okay, how about we talk about books? You want to do that? You know what, Tom, you need to write a book, and here's why. It would be so much, we would get so many more views if we could post, like, horror authors react to ... But we can't put that. So if
I didn't say it was burger time.
so if you wrote a book, yeah, if
It's
you
only for the guy who's like, here's all my drinks. I'm gonna start posting every burger I have. You.
so if you were to just write one horror book, we can call you a horror author, and then at that point we can put in the YouTube videos of like horror authors eat a crap ton of Burger King burgers. Find out what happens next. We'll get all kinds of views from that on YouTube. You need to help our YouTube formula.
You're gonna be upset if my books sell more than yours.
Alright. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Let's give a pause again.
Wait, are we doing books?
Yes, we can edit this later. I only have 2 books I read. Do you have books done?
No, I have not gotten.
We can do those ones and we'll talk about what we're working on.
Okay. Alright, so we're at the tail end of this.
That means it's burger time.
It's not the latest we've ever been here.
It's 10:47 p.m.
Yeah, so we've been here.
And we are old.
Yeah, we certainly been here much later. I've had a busy day all day long.
And one of us ate 14 burgers.
And that
Nine burgers.
was not Chuck or myself.
I'm not even upset, Tom. I'm impressed.
We're going to talk about
Tomorrow's gonna be terrible.
Lots of water.
horror novels that we've read, and actually really one has 2. So
I'll be doing next month. I got a batch coming next month.
The 2 books that I read, which were absolutely standout. One I initially read back spring.
I'm trying to read it. Okay.
Back in spring. The first one is Midnight Doorways. Pakistan by Usman. And that was so this collection runs the gamut from horror to ghost stories to magical realism. And I'm gonna be careful when I say this, because I know this is loaded. Rudyard Kipling has a lot of great stories.
Racism.
Right, yeah, I'm working off that. Rudyard Kipling has a lot of great stories, that has that experience with other cultures and things like that. The problem with Rudyard Kipling, and again, it's like I always talk about this with my 12 AP students. It's always best when this stuff is framed as a conversation that we can all learn from versus a let's not ever talk about this ever. It's kind of the same thing with like H.P. Lovecraft racism. You cannot deny H.P. Lovecraft's racism, and once your brain is flipped in that perspective and you start reading his stories from that perspective, you're like, holy crap, how did I not see this before? At the same time, you also cannot deny the contribution that A.P. Lovecraft made to the horror genre in general, simply with his concept of other beings, things like that. And the worst thing you can do in this situation is be a staunch let's burn every H.P. Lovecraft book that ever existed, or be a staunch defender of H.P. Lovecraft and refuse to address the racism here.
You need to think about it.
Well, what you need, not only that, there needs to be conversation.
Tom, this is 21st century with the internet. We're past thinking at this point.
There needs to be conversation. It's like last year with my honor students, we did our first ever horror and race unit. We read Lovecraft Country, we read The Ballad of Black Tom by Richard Ball, but we just
I'm reading it right now.
yeah,
That's
The Ballad of
next
Black
month.
Tom
Next month.
was
Next month
so
I'll review.
good.
Next month.
And you know, and the thing I told my students was, look, we're going to have a conversation about this. We may not necessarily all agree, but the learning, the dynamic learning comes from the center of this conversation. And we can't shut down and not discuss it. So I know this. So Rudyard Kipling has got some great stories like the Fans of Rickshaw and others, but you can't deny the ethnocentrism that is in there with the characters.
Well, just like you can look at any sort of cultural story today and be like, oh, let's take a look at this through the lens of the culture. You can actually do the same thing with historical Western cultures as well. Look at Rudyard Kipling and say, here's the lens of this culture.
Right. So going back to Midnight River, his stories have that same vibe, but he is Pakistani. So he's writing as someone who has grown up in that culture, experienced that, and it's just it has like for example, instead of Rudyard Kipling who's writing as a white man, we have Usman T. developing his own mythology from his own childhood, his own collection of this, and it's just probably one of the best collections I've ever read. Midnight Doorway can be ordered through a website, and it's a beautiful book too, beautifully presented, beautifully formatted, it's hardcover.
I just want to jump on there, Kevin, because first of all, much respect about the whole having a conversation before you decide to jump on one or the other. There's an article I was planning to show to my PIG students probably. In Pennsylvania right now, you have kids actually protesting the participation in government. Haha. No, we in Pennsylvania, the district, a school board that's all white, of course. They got the kids actually protesting that school board's decision to remove books that essentially they think is going to teach about racism. The whole phantom fear of the critical race theory thing that they've been pushing on us.
Right.
Now, having said that, someone did a good article on CNN saying, you have people from the extreme right and the extreme left both have done the same thing, demanding to ban books instead of actually having a decent conversation about them. Like, even to the left, those who demand to ban Huckleberry Finn because the N word.
Right.
And you're absolutely right that you need to have a conversation about it. It does not mean, I'm going to put out Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf in my classroom, but you need to discuss. And I think that's what some people forget about books. They think of one thing and, we can never do it ever again, and that's silly.
I think, and we're getting away a little from book reviews, but anyone who watched the show knows I think that discussion.
We just go off on them.
I think
that is the core of the show.
That's true. That discussion aspect is more important and what's lacking everywhere. like for example, those who want to unintentionally
Stomp on things.
unintentionally defend Lovecraft without admitting but at the same time, should we completely jettison all of Lovecraft's work? Is there racism in Lovecraft? Absolutely.
It's pretty explicit, a few stories.
Yeah. Really.
A couple stories are pretty explicit.
How many Lovecraft stories can you read where the Aboriginal people have big lips and big eyes, or the country people are all inbred and
yeah, that's one thing that's kind of funny about. All right, so we'll categorize here people who are like white defenders of Lovecraft. It's like it's not that racism isn't that bad. A lot of the same people are like they are the same people that Lovecraft would also look down on. Like you're defending Lovecraft, but he would also see you as less human.
Right.
I grew up in like the backcountry of Tioga County. I would also be one of the lesser people, the monsters of Lovecraft. Mm-hmm. Conversations are fun.
Nobody talks about it. And the thing that was really eye-opening to me, and this is a shameful thing is I never even thought might have been racism at the hands of perfect straight. He's really not never brought. And the parents were telling me this is the first time our son has been in a class talking about marginalized people. Oh my God. And I'm like, wow. And I don't think I said anything
Mm-hmm.
I just said we need to talk about this. Let's talk about this openly. So anyway, moving on to my next book review. I'm sorry that turned into.
Usually I just hear him screaming 24/7 on the other side of the wall.
Oh my God! I am not the loudest person in that hallway. That would be you. See, he has no answer for that. So the second book that I want to talk about, as I burp for my guidance drill, my favorite book of the year, I think it's the best book that I've read this year, is Come With Me by Ronald Malfi. Now I will admit, I'm a Ronald Malfi boy. I have almost every single one of his books. Ron has been a great source of not only inspiration but and advice over the years.
Ron's a good guy.
Yeah, I love his work. I remember Ron telling me at the convention, we were talking about, I don't know what we were talking about. We may have been talking about politics. We may have been talking about trying to impress people.
Kevin, in politics of the horror, are you trying to make half people mad at us?
No, what I mean by that is not politics in the sense of Republican and Democrats, but as in like jockeying the horror market, jockeying the
You're still trying to get half people mad at us.
Well, let's be honest. You said it earlier in today's broadcast.
It's who you know.
And while that is a valid assessment,
there's a few people, and we'll generalize on the left and on the right who are like, let's rally the troops. And there's a whole bunch of people who are like, look, can we just please write scary stories?
Well, long story short, this is not.
Oh, all genres. YA is yeah. Oh yeah.
There are people at our work who are there to impress, and there are people at work who just want to be there. And that's it. And Ron Malfi is there. He told me one day it's all about the words. It's all that matters. The words that you put. And every single novel I've read of his is and his next album. Yes. So Come With Me is wonderful. It's the first person I read it. About a husband. It's ironic job. Literary trend. Job is a Japanese novel. Not that wife is a reporter for a newspaper. The type of reporting she does is plot stories or she is randomly killed in and what he ends up discovering through the process wife has whole secret life for years. Became obsessed with what it looks like generation planning serial story that she was like in her like at first he was worried that his wife was like mild spoiled her. Initially he discovers all these hotel receipts and hotel in random places. I mean, and it turns out what she's doing on is she's independently chasing down this serial killer story. It was on the track of a serial killer where the killings were so far apart in isolated locale that nobody connected the dots. And it is just a wonderful story. Main character starts following his deceased wife's footsteps and is trying to put the pieces together and in true Malfi fashion. Are there supernatural things going on? Is his wife haunting him? Is the spirit of his wife trying to guide him? Is it just his mind making free association connections where none really exist? That's never really sorted out for us. But it is without, and I think it may be already in its second or third film, which right there is tested. Like what a wonderful novel it is.
All right, pause for a second.
I think
Dang it, Ron, why are you so good? Because that sounds awesome. And if I were to be at an event with you in, let's say, a couple weeks' time, I'm going to totally buy your book.
I just want to party with you, man.
he's the best at party.
Ron is... No, you understand.
I was there at Horrifying.
Ron is a great author, but if you want to go to, like, party mode, like, in terms of authors in party mode, Ron is, like, the king.
Okay, like, I was there at Horrifying, where he not only was doing material, also nobody knows to this day, I've never seen.
Ron is a rock star.
Yeah. You know, there are some authors that believe that rock
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yes. Like legit.
He's like legit FBI.
Basically.
Oh, by the way, not only is he actually a literal rock star.
Yeah.
His band Gear, he's already, and he now plays in a band.
To our viewers, go home and cry because you are not Ron Melfi.
Right.
Like, your parents try to tell you that you're okay and try to make you feel good about yourself. No, No, feel bad about yourself because you're not Ron Melfi. I'm not Ron Melfi. I'm gonna go home and cry.
Are you two done fanboying over
No,
this?
not even a little bit.
Tom, if you meet Ron Melfi, you will also.
Ron, I'm gonna give you a call. Just have you come in, and make them cry and wet themselves.
Okay, he's usually a scared. That's another reason why you have to come back next summer because he's usually there every summer, and to know Ron is to love Ron.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So come with me.
He is man crush material.
Oh, absolutely. Come with me by Ron Melfi and Doorway. Take a break and we launch.
We can go into our stuff. We can go into our books.
I don't have one. You go ahead.
Okay, let's just pause for a minute so like later I can.
I have to ghostwrite a book for Tom so that we can just colloquially say horror writers.
Random. Okay, so I wrote sort of a book. There when I was finding stories.
Maybe.
Okay, here's a random story that maybe will set up probably 10 years ago. Very crucial.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not,
LinkedIn.
Back when it was still I ghostwriting down there just like ghostwriting before, but like ghostwriting.
Because stuff.
I used to go so she asked
Oh,
Okay, I have heard the
no,
story.
yeah,
I have heard
yeah.
the story.
She wants to write a novel about heart surgery. And I think I should you up with it. I'm like, all right, what the heck? What? So I meet this guy.
Hey me.
And basically he gives me a 90-page book report. And so I was at a particular point in my career where I certainly didn't have a lot of pressing. I only really ever spent a couple of hours. Didn't really have and I looked up your basic ghostwriting. I will be honest, I did not go for the tier.
And you should have.
For your I probably should have. He would have paid it. For my ghostwriting rates, I kind of went like middle tier, and then I also gave him itemized all the paper and printer ink that I bought for.
Oh, Kevin.
So I wrote a novel called, and you can actually still find this, and I actually made a dramatic reading of it, but after several drinks and beers, I made a dramatic reading of it. So I'd say important. The tagline was an important medical. You find them, we fix them. And it was a novel about unethical heart stents. As a heart surgeon, this heart surgeon was very concerned that too many heart surgeons were getting heart stents because of symptoms that really came from gallbladders and heart problems, and that there was just not only are doing it to earn money, but it would cause problems down the road. So he developed a story about a very well-to-do paper named Dick Ledbetter. And
Go on. Go on.
Dixie Norman.
And ends up having a heart attack, and then
Is her name Vagina Placeholder?
and he's rushed into a heart stent procedure when he doesn't really need it.
Suddenly morality.
dies because of all the stress of an unnecessary incident, and he ends up.
So all these books that are out here, don't read those. Go read this one instead.
You know, I was gonna hire Chuck to be a ghostwriter about someone who gets sick from eating a bunch of hamburgers.
And he ends up
Yes.
dying.
I can do that for you, Tom.
There you go.
This is basically the plot of.
Are you trying to sound old? Pensive?
That's the end of The Room, which is known for being one of the worst movies of all time. I'll be honest. I kind of want to write a really crappy ghost novel.
He got paid.
Now that I get paid, this pays for me.
Moolah.
This pays for me to go.
Excuse us.
They actually had a lot of fun with it. He actually told me I had to dial him back. First of all, I decided that my opening scene would be Dick Ledbetter and a secretary at a hotel. And I was like, my purple prose was terrible. Where they're in a hotel room, he's in his silk boxers, and she's in underwear.
This is your opening scene?
And she's giving a blowjob. A heart attack.
Thank God Kevin had to tell us.
So welcome to Writing 101. Everything you just heard, don't do that.
He had a heart attack while she gave him a blowjob. And then
Oh, Kevin.
the rest of the story was, I don't even remember. He got dead, and he almost got into a car accident and died.
I have a feeling Kevin wrote most of this when he was already drinking, so.
No.
That's a great idea.
No, the worst part was I wrote this sober.
Maybe you should have drank.
A good portion of the middle of the novel was this lengthy court trial where he was trying to sue the doctor and he losing all his money. And by the end of the novel, I don't know. You find him, Will?
His lawyer's name is Jim Legal Briefs.
Oh my gosh. So that is the story of the one and only time I ghost wrote a novel. The worst part was to cut the guy off. Like I wrote it several times. He gave me several edits. Swear gave me edits. I applied those edits. No, this is still not right. And then he ended up moving down south. And I used that as an opportunity to start a connection with one of the people that found out.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, on my own writing to do, I really can't help getting further. The best part is he very magnanimously, by the way. He's like, we can share credit for this. I won't say the doctor's name. We can have these by Dr. Wilson, Kevin Lucia. And I'm like, oh, no, that's okay. I made something up where I said, at this standard rate that I'm charging, you get to take complete credit. This is my way of saying I do not want my name on it.
So if you're any sort of surgeon, if you're a surgeon looking to write an interesting novel, you want to talk to this guy.
The moral of the story is if you're a writer and you can whore yourself out.
No more.
You listen to this. You want to do a follow-up novel. I'm almost disappointed you want to do this novel. He wanted to do a horror thriller novel about a stripper who is going to get revenge on all of her Johns by somehow
not cliche at all.
Surgically implanting razor blades in her JJ. Oh God!
Not,
she can cut up John.
Not cliche at all.
First of all, that's a hooker.
No, I didn't say stripper. I meant hooker.
Either
I'm a little. So anyway, ghostwriting 101. If there's money and it's writing and you don't have to take the fall for it, just write.
All right. Well, while Tom is peeing,
Well, let's hold on for a second.
we can do our book reviews or our book discussions. This is a segment where I show interesting things from Kevin's Horror Cave. What do we got here? We have Best New Horror, edited by Stephen Jones.
Excellent.
Yep. Okay. We have here Ramsey Campbell, Neil Gaiman, Stephen Gallagher, Graham Masterton, Paul McCauley, Michael Smith. One from Marshall Smith. Okay, what do we have here? We have One of Many Skulls. This one has a switch on it.
Yeah, there is.
No batteries, or batteries are dead. Yep. Filling time. We have a bottle opener. What we got?
That is from the last Antho.
Sam Adams.
AnthoCon was actually got their room comp by
This is the best Lego mini.
that
Yep, Silent Hill Nurse. I love Silent Hill. Great book, great video game series.
the second film was
So, one of those questions that comes up often is if you could write for an established property, what would you choose? I'll be honest. Silent Hill is a top 3 for me, if not top number 1. Because I played through a couple of the games, I've watched videos on the other games I haven't played. I would absolutely love to do Silent Hill. I love the concept of Silent Hill, and the monsters you face are a manifestation of your regrets and your fears based on what you've done wrong, which is a great concept. Mm-hmm. Yep. As much as I love, let's say, like Alien, I love the movies that have been made. I love the creation. I think the xenomorph is brilliant. I would, if I was asked, I would definitely write a series, write a book for it. But I also feel like it's been played out at this point too.
I would.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's what I would like. If I were to write
Kevin done?
We're filling time. Yes. The benefit of Supernatural and Silent Hill is that you have more freedom to create something new versus Alien, which you have an established enemy. You can create new characters. Like there's always room to create new characters, but I feel like they've kind of played their hand a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. No, I would say Warhammer as well. That's another series. You're probably not familiar with that one. That's the one where you've got kind of like there's a whole big history that's there. It'd be fun to play with something dark with that.
All right, so we
I
are
saw your picture, by the way. I
at.
hate it. You took me in
Oh,
Chuck.
all right.
Is it bad?
For me, it is. Yeah.
So we are at the end of Into the Abyss. At 11.
This is old man hour.
This is actually earlier than we usually end. Right? Have a lot going on. So Chuck and I are going to end with just talking about some personal projects we've got going on. Especially because both of us have some imminent releases. So Chuck,
Imminent
Okay.
and intimate.
They're gonna say intimate releases.
They are both.
And in some ways it could be intimate. Go ahead, Chuck. Why don't you begin when you're ready?
Okay. So early next year, early 2022, will be releasing Sticks and Stones. There's a potential. I've had conversations with the publisher. They actually might take it up and publish it as well. It'll either be that or self-published, but either way, coming early 2022. And it's going to be a collection of horror stories based around childhood. I am loving this project. I've got a group of beta readers that have been going through the stories, and several stories have absolutely gutted them, which was the whole point. Yeah, it's emotional stories for them. I do feel a little bad. They're okay with horror, but they're not horror centric readers. And I've been pushing them to their limit a little bit. But I would also say it's more of a welcoming series. One thing I find interesting is that even in horror anthologies, children are one of those topics and one of those characters that you usually are supposed to tread lightly on. There are people who are like, yeah, you can totally write splatterpunk, but don't submit a story where you're just killing a bunch of kids. That's one of those no-nos. Same thing with animals as well. Like, tread lightly if you're going to go on those topics. I'm handling it gently. It's not about just let me kill a bunch of kids, even though some kids do die. It's more looking into topics of childhood. For example, one of the stories that's going to definitely get trigger warnings is a story that deals with the topic of childhood suicide, done in a creative way. It's an allegory, and it's done with something that kind of harkens back to a classic children's fantasy literature, storyteller. There's even some comedy in there, which is kind of a weird break in there. I purposely wrote it in different ways. One story will be written as more of a fantasy fairy tale type story. You can hear the British narrator in the back of your head reading the story, and then you'll go into another one that's a post apocalyptic, in your face, very intimate tale. So it's intentionally written to be very different genres, but all dealing with the issue of childhood and, on the flip side, parents trying to navigate that as well. It's been great. It's been tons of fun. I am finishing up the last of the stories from that. Pretty much all the stories have been written. I'm on the last two. I'm tweaking them and finishing them up now. I've already started editing a bunch of them. A few previously submitted, published stories as well that I'll be kind of collecting into one anthology. So I'm excited for it, and that'll be coming out early next year.
Awesome.
They're trying to.
Yeah, coming from Crystal Lake.
Point to the bottle.
I pitched it for my Halloween development. Two of them were previously published. Part of the Halloween Carnival collection from Hydra. And the other one was in. And then I wrote two other developments. And obviously they're Halloween tales, but as always,
Is that a Ben Baldwin cover?
yeah, always, always, always cover. And it takes place in I'm a little anxious. I've been really, really happy about the early reviews. For me as a horror writer, we talked about it earlier in the podcast. this. I'm obviously worried. These are my stories about Halloween. That, worlds are and so that's what I really. All four stories are very different. Um, and so far the initial feedback has been really good. My second game is one that I really wanted to do for a very long time. But when I really started reading the biggest thing I picked up were a lot of shadows by heart, the Borderlands Carl Edward Wagner's run for Stuart Whisper anthologies. And I wanted to be an editor, and I wanted to edit a series of anthologies where I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be. I just want.
But Trolley nominated him for awards.
I just want a regular series every year for either and I wonder if it's whatever, or I really get into this year's edition. So I partnered with Cemetery Games Media to edit an anthology, literally for fun. This time around, I solicited authors directly because it was my first time never done it. And I
Cemetery Games, you're gonna get more like 700 submissions.
And I said, here's the guidelines interpreted. I really hope this flies, it does. Volume 2 is a core group of 8 authors, and then I'm going to do that way I'm going to have a bio attached to it. I just have
Nice.
Well, Powerball and Mega Millions are now over 400. I should get some tickets tomorrow at least. And
But no. Honestly, Tom, have you read any books on history lately? What topics have interested you lately?
hold on.
Get a pillow.
No. I enjoy history. I like history.
Oh yeah.
All right,
That's
history
the one that's
history
on.
teacher's down. All right,
No,
go ahead.
I got like so many things on the burner. It's just not the time to read it. Because I got all those books from Scares That Cares, including yours. I will be reading yours. I got one I read the first 4 chapters on called Sanitarium. It looks good, except because you got a Barnes and Noble. It's a horror section, but you might make it a thriller. They've done that.
Yep.
And if we're looking at history books, I mean, I read not a whole one, but was reading on J.P. Morgan. I like that guy who has money and power and all that stuff. Pretty cool.
Yep.
Maybe we should think about that for horror.
Also, as a final parting comment, and this just occurred to me, October 2nd, Chuck and I will be down at the Wilkes-Barre Barnes and Noble, reuniting their Halloween book signing, which they did for many years, which I attended for many years. And we're going to be down there, and it just occurred to me this would be a great opportunity to get some interviews, short clips, talking with the authors.
Yep.
Maybe some videos of their readings.
Yep.
To post as a supplemental.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for one response back from the manager from Barnes and Noble was saying, we've set up the event page, and once that does, I'm going to be posting advertisements.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, so we apologize for anyone who tried to beat this with time. We may just have to go back to this format for a while, but thanks for this. And next time.
He may or may not be wearing clothes.
It's
At
clothes
the
are
very
overrated.
least,
Exactly.
and it'll be October, and we'll be doing a Saturday night horror movie club, and I think we probably should pick a good October Halloween.
Absolutely. Not to mention we're looking into doing some scary stuff as well. I mean, you guys are at Reaper's Revenge.
Reaper's
We were
Revenge,
thinking
yeah,
of
the Sherwood.
yeah, the
That's right.
Sherwood Inn in my town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a ghost story tour and overnight. I already told these guys though, I'm not sleeping in a place where I can just go 2 minutes and there's my house.
Well, then maybe Chuck and I will sleep.
You can sleep over at my place.
No, the point is sleeping over.
Tom, we need to kill people at your house first so that it's haunted, and then we will stay at your place.
Sleep over as long as they're anyway.
Stop slacking.
As always, our motto is what?
Eat and be scary.
Eat and be scary. Have a great day.
Good night.
Got it.
Oh. I am so out of shape. You're right. You know what?